So while the Jalen Ramsey trade definitely made most of the headlines, as that was obviously the biggest player getting moved out of that situation, I do find the Marcus Peters trade to be another very interesting situation. It kind of seems like just a great situation for Baltimore. I mean, you're getting a guy who has shown he has some pretty great potential and has at times been a big playmaker, but you're also not giving up too much. I mean, you're losing Kenny Young, who is probably best known for just delivering a big hit in a preseason game, and then also just giving up a fifth round pick. So it seems pretty much like, you're just getting a rental, but you're also not giving up too much to get him. So it just seems like a no risk situation for Baltimore. However, if you are a Ravens fan, I wouldn't get your hopes up too high. I know you look at the 24 interceptions in just a little bit over 4 seasons and think, wow, that must be very good, but it's not quite that way. I mean, listen, any guy with that many interceptions, and also he's returned 4 of those for touchdowns, I mean, that definitely has its advantages, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he is an elite corner by any means. He has his issues as a corner, which largely explains why he did get traded for so little, but let's just jump into what I don't love about him, and then I'll talk about what I do like about him. One thing about Peters is that he's not exactly the best tackler, and by that I mean he doesn't really even try to tackle on many plays. Like, on this play, for example, it's going to be a cover 4 zone, and here's how it's going to work for San Francisco. They're going to send the receiver in the top half of the screen to run a go route, which will push Peters back, as he's the guy in charge of covering the zone on the top left-hand corner of the screen, and then they're simply just going to send their fullback just underneath him. You kind of like to see there be some communication for somebody to cover up the fullback, but that's not going to happen on that play, and that's not really what I'm trying to talk about, as that's not really Peters' fault. He's supposed to cover the receiver deep. He does that. Now he has to break in and potentially make a tackle on the fullback who is running. And listen, I'm not going to get on a defensive back for not being able to tackle a fullback or a tight end or just really anybody. I mean, as a defensive back, tackling is definitely not going to be your strong suit. It is nice when you have some of those good tackling corners, like Richard Sherman comes to mind. And obviously safeties have to tackle, but strictly speaking about corners, especially just coverage corners like Peters, I get it, you're not going to be the best tackler. That's okay, that's not what they pay you to do. But you still are going to have to make tackles, and watch his attempt to make this tackle. It seems like it was playing two-hand touch out there. He didn't want to actually get his body into trying to make this play, and he didn't. The only time he really made significant contact was when the fullback was already getting wrapped up, which at that point, I mean, that's not going to really do anything. That's honestly something where if I was a defensive coordinator trying to coach Marcus Peters, it would just drive me crazy. You want guys who are willing to put their body into it and try to make a tackle. As a person, I do understand why Peters maybe doesn't want to have to risk an injury to try to make a tackle when, I mean, again, that's not what they're paying him to do. They're paying him to be a coverage corner, and so maybe he just doesn't want to get hurt, which I do understand. Sometimes freak injuries just do happen when you're trying to make a routine tackle. I mean, that is football. I think it happens a little bit less in open field than it does just, when there's a lot of guys in the area, but I still have to say that I'm not going to blame Peters for that necessarily, like, as a person. Like, I get it. I mean, some guys play because they absolutely want to win, and they want to make sure that they're definitely going to win. I think Peters wants to win, but I think Peters would rather lose and not get hurt and have a good performance than win and have a bad performance or get an injury. I totally could be wrong. I don't know the guy, but at least from what I've seen on tape, that's kind of what he's shown. And so again, I'm not blaming the guy, I'm not criticizing him, that's totally his choice and he can do whatever he wants, but that's what you're getting if you are the Baltimore Ravens. One other fault I've seen in Peters' game is he has a tendency to bite on moves a little bit too much sometimes. Like on this play, for example, it's going to be a cover one robber concept, which means that Peters, he just has a one-on-one matchup right there on the top half of the screen. The 49ers receiver he's going up against is Marquise Goodwin, and watch what's going to happen right when this ball is snapped. Watch what Goodwin is going to do here. He's going to make a bunch of quick moves right off the bat, so for Peters, he has no idea where Goodwin is going to go here. But also, if you notice right here where this is stopped, I stopped it right when Goodwin is about to make his cut. I think if you look at Goodwin from this point of view, you can tell he's about to cut to the middle of this field, but again, I stopped it literally the second he put his right foot out like that, so it would be very hard for Peters to realize that in real time. And so if he cuts to the middle of the field, Peters isn't able to get there in time. I mean, that happens, whatever. I wouldn't really get on him for that. But what I think is key here is if you look at Peters, look at how far off he still is from Goodwin. You can tell that he's definitely a little bit afraid of getting burned deep by Goodwin, which does make some sense. I mean, Goodwin is an Olympian who ran a 4.24 40-yard dash. So that's kind of why I think he's playing so far off. He hasn't created any contact because he wants to make sure that he's not getting beat deep, and he's actually pretty convinced that Goodwin is going to be running a deep route here. So by the time Goodwin does cut in, what I want you to watch with Peters is look at how he still runs so far to the left side of the screen. I mean, he runs almost 5 yards further than Goodwin is going to be. That just makes things too easy for San Francisco, and it's an easy completion because he had it in his head pre-snap. This is probably going to be a go route here. I can't let him get by me. And then when it wasn't it, he just got beat. My thing about watching Peters actually is I don't think he's a dumb guy. In fact, I think he's the opposite. I think he's actually a really smart player, but I think that sometimes kind of hurts him in ways because he overthinks things. He's thinking, okay, we have a cover one situation, so this would be a great time for a go route. They have a great deep threat, so they're probably going to run a go route here, so I'm going to be prepared for a go route. When in reality, San Francisco never even really ran a go route. It was just looking like it might be a go route due to the situation, and it wasn't, and he got burned. He also can get burned in plays like this. I talked about this in my Jameis Winston video, but I think this is a good example of the negative effects of Marcus Peters, which is why I'm going to break down this play once again, and here's how it's going to work. It's going to be a cover zero here, so there's no help. This is not the opportunity where you can try something crazy here. You have to make sure that you are at least in tackling distance of the receiver at all times. A completion isn't the end of the world. You would like to not give up a first down, but if it happens, it happens. And also, that's where Peters is. He's going up one-on-one against Mike Evans. So, big time matchup right here. So a lot of guys in this situation would simply just say, okay, I gotta just play conservative. If I give up a catch, no big deal. But it also is worth mentioning that in a cover zero, the quarterback is going to have to make their decision quickly, and it can lead to some mistakes. And that is especially true when you're playing Jameis Winston, someone who Marcus Peters had a pick six on today against. And after this ball is snapped, one thing you will notice when looking at Mike Evans is it does a little bit look like he might be running up to the top half of the screen. It's very subtle, but if you look at his left leg, it is pointed a little bit towards the top half of the screen, so that is something that maybe could be a tell that he's going to be running a route like that, just an out route to the top half of the screen. And Marcus Peters is probably thinking, hey, we're down 11 points in the fourth quarter with 12 minutes left. I have to make a play here. Let's see if I can do something. And so he's going to try to jump the route. But unfortunately for Peters, there's one slight problem with trying to jump that route, and it's that is actually not the route Evans is running. He instead just keeps running straight. Peters bites on it, he gets way out of position, and makes for an easy catch for Mike Evans. Peters' pick six in this game actually came after that, so, give him credit for not letting that affect him too much. He was able to get a pick six in that game, so, he has good sides as well, but he does have negatives. He's going to try to make a play. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. That's just the type of guy he is. You live by the Peters and you die by the Peters. And Baltimore is a team that likes to blitz. So, honestly, Marcus Peters is the kind of guy who I'm sure Chiefs fans and Rams fans will tell you he'll drive you crazy. Because he'll get interceptions, he'll get pick sixes, but then he'll also get burned for huge touchdowns like that one. So, there's positives and negatives, but I've already talked about the negatives, so let's get into the positives, because there definitely are some pretty significant positives. Like on this play, what San Francisco is going to do is they're actually going to try to take advantage of Peters' aggressive play style. And the way they're going to do that is they're going to fake as though it's going to be a screen pass. So by doing that, they're going to have those two receivers look like they're going out the block, and then they'll send that receiver down basically over there. And so the idea is you're going to fake as though you're going to just run a quick screen to him, then Peters will break down to try to potentially get a pick six, if you can jump it. But then the receiver can just run over him, get wide open in the end zone for a touchdown. I actually think this is a pretty clever play call by Kyle Shanahan. I like it. He's using the other team's weaknesses to his advantage, so to speak. When you have an opposing corner who can be a little bit too aggressive, sometimes see if you can get him to bite on certain plays and then have that not be the actual play. It's a pretty good idea. However, take a look what happens right when this ball is snapped. For one thing, Peters doesn't bite on this one as much as maybe San Francisco would have hoped. He clearly was expecting some sort of a screen pass, and if you look, he's clearly looking at Garoppolo, and, he's ready to try and knock the ball away. He doesn't want to have to make a tackle, That's kind of his mindset right here. Maybe I can get the interception, maybe I can knock the ball down. That's what I want to do. But because of this, now he's looking at Garoppolo, and now he's aware of a potential pass. But in fairness, this is a tough play for Peters, because since this throw is going to go somewhat close to the corner of the end zone, this now means that as a receiver, you can just turn your shoulder and run there, whereas for Peters, he's going to have to kind of backtrack there. But he has the athleticism and the footwork to get back and get this interception. Pretty good play by Peters. It was athletic, but what I like about that is it was a smart play. It was not a dumb play. Peters is not a dumb guy. Just because he's aggressive and will sometimes bite on certain plays doesn't mean he's dumb. He's one of those guys who treats football like a chess game, but you know what? Sometimes it's easier to beat a guy who actually is solid at chess than someone who has no clue what they're doing at chess. Someone who bites on every move is easy to beat, but someone who bites on some moves but also is intelligent enough to realize when some moves are coming is definitely a hindrance, and he's just as annoying to play against as he is when he's playing for you. Sure, he'll drive you crazy as a Ravens fan when he gets burned for big touchdowns, but he'll also drive you crazy as a Browns fan when Baker Mayfield throws an interception to him. So that's what he's going to basically be doing for the Ravens, I think. I'll show one more play to just really prove my point that he is a smart player. This play was just a brilliant play. It's actually going back to his Kansas City days, so we're going back a couple years here, but it was probably my favorite play that he's ever made, so that's why I want to talk about it. This is a cover 1 blitz here, so it's not quite as risky as the cover 0, but it still is pretty risky. I mean, there's only one safety deep, so definitely if he gets burned, it could still very easily be a touchdown. Those are the routes that the Chargers receivers are going to be running, and that's where Peters is. So his receiver is in charge of running a go route towards the sideline, which is definitely a route that could potentially get open. I mean, if Peters were to lose the one-on-one matchup, that would just be a bad situation and can result in a touchdown. However, just with the matchups, Peters trusts himself that he feels like Rivers isn't going to try to take the shot. He feels like Rivers is not going to try him here, and that is true, as the route that Rivers is really going to try to throw to is going to be that route right there, in front of Peters. And so Peters is playing very far away from the line of scrimmage, and watch what happens after this ball is snapped. Watch how he's still just looking at Rivers. He's keeping his eyes on the quarterback. He's doing this because he feels pretty confident in his abilities that Rivers just isn't going to try him on this play, and now he can look over and realize there's actually going to be a receiver right over there that Rivers is going to try to hit. And so watch how with his awareness and his just ability to move quickly, he's going to leap up in front and get this interception. I mean, that's just an unbelievably aware play. There's good players that can't do that in zone coverage, let alone man coverage. That's so much more difficult because in zone coverage, you're supposed to be looking at the quarterback. In man coverage, you're almost not supposed to be looking at the quarterback, and yet he is anyways. When he makes a good play, it's a highlight reel play. However, unfortunately, when he makes a bad play, it's still a highlight reel play, but just not on his highlight reel. But yeah, I mean, I like this move from Baltimore's perspective, basically because you're giving up very little to get him, and it's kind of a low-risk, high-reward type situation. Worst case scenario, you can just not play him, or only play him when you're down big and need a big play. So, I like the move. I think it's smart. What do you guys think? Do you think it's a good move, or do you think Peters could be some trouble? I always enjoy hearing what you guys have to say, and as always, thanks for watching.